when you go through Romans 12, it becomes clear that everything God has given you in your life is a tool in the toolbox of sanctity. Wherever you are planted, you are to grow and flourish. No matter your circumstances. I'll tell you a story. In the 1790s, there was a young girl named Elizabeth Canori Mora, born in around Rome. By the time she was a young lady, as a young girl, she wanted to become religious. But as a young lady, she was very beautiful, and her family was not going to send her to a convent. They wanted to send her to marriage. And they arranged a marriage for her with a man who seemed, on paper, to look very like a good, suitable husband. Good family, potentially good career, could provide. So they arranged this marriage. She did not want to get married, but she resigned her will to the will of her parents, who was placed in authority over her. And she got married, and she became very worldly in the process. Her husband, they had 4 kids. 2 died in infancy, and the other 2 survived. Her husband, also very worldly. Not a man who had made the commitment to God, not a man living for God's glory and for the salvation of souls, let alone providing for his family. He became a scallywag, as I would like to say, and he began to cheat on his spouse. He began to beat his spouse. He would spend long nights at the bar, come home drunk, and then eventually he wouldn't come home. He spent all the family's money on his other girl, and the family became destitute. It's a hard lesson, a hard story in Blessed Elizabeth Canori Mora. But Blessed Elizabeth was special. She had a conversion through this experience, a reversion back to her faith. She gave that yes back to God, and she began to have very many profound mystical experiences. So much so that she had visions of the great apostasy in the church, cardinals that would turn against cardinals that would turn against the Pope, apostasy in the church, people leaving the faith, bloodshed in St. Peter's Square, and so much more. She was shown, she had near occasions of death where she would be shown these visions. She would die and come back. Cardinals and politicians would show up to her door to ask for advice because the word spread that she was that mystic in town. You might say, well, when did she divorce her husband? She never did. Never. When her husband came stumbling home drunk in the morning, his clothes were washed and folded on the bed. And no matter what politician or cardinal was in her living room or her kitchen asking for advice, she kicked them out because her husband was home. No matter what abuse came out of that scallywag's mouth, she offered it up as a sacrifice for his soul. No matter how many times she was personally humiliated in the community because of his out-and-out adulterous affairs, she offered up her humiliations with grace and charity. She was destitute, so she had to take on work to feed her 2 daughters, to raise her 2 daughters. And on her deathbed, she told those girls that their father would become a Catholic priest. And when he learns that she is dying, he comes and he is too late. She had already passed. And he sobbed and he wept and he repented for all that he had done to her. He converted and became a Catholic priest and died a holy death some 20 years later. Imagine that same Blessed Elizabeth Canori Mora in 2022. How long would she have stayed married to a scallywag like that? How many of her friends, her family members would have said, you deserve better. You should leave that guy. But there's something greater that a saint would accomplish than just you or I. Should women be in abusive relationships? No. I think it's pretty obvious. You got to remove yourself from abuse. It's pretty obvious. But removing and separation isn't equal to divorce. Blessed Elizabeth knew that if she just left him, who would pray for his soul? Who on planet Earth would care enough to offer the humiliation, the suffering, the destitution for the soul of this man that would surely end up in hell? There is no other person. There is just his spouse, sacramentally bound, to offer up grace for each other in that sacrament. Blessed Elizabeth knew that, and she offered herself up for that. 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 3, this is good, and it is acceptable in the sight of God our Savior, who desires all men to be saved and come to the knowledge of truth. John 15:7, if you abide in me,